Hello, welcome to our next webinar with VOQUZ Labs here. My name is Jens Kettler. We have a guest today again, Nicolas. Hey,
Hello,
introduce
Jens.
yourself.
Yeah, I'm Nicolas Hernandez. I'm responsible of SAP technical side in Focus Labs. Yeah, good to have you again.
Yeah, and my name is Jens Kettler. I'm responsible for our GSC unit. So today we are talking about access violation management. We did have webinars on that topic previously. Today is the big picture, meaning all encompassing. We're going to cover most of the topics that you can speak about here. Very excited to look into that. So first of all, maybe very briefly, what is access violation management? We can come to a more technical definition maybe on the next slide, but it's like, yes, you can speed with your car. You can go across a red traffic light. That's possible technically, but you should not do it. What does that mean in terms of SAP security or access concepts and access violation in SAP? Now, we are speaking about insider threats. We're not speaking about somebody hacking into the system. And we're speaking about a user has authorizations and uses them. So you could say technically everything is fine. But for some reason, the authorization is in excess of what the user actually should have or what he actually should do with that authorization. And he's doing stuff that he's not supposed to do if you would follow the business rules, not the technical restrictions that the authorization concept provides in the SAP system. So you can either work on the authorization concept, maybe that will cover some of the cases, or you can introduce compensating controls in that case. And here we're speaking about monitoring, detecting those access violations, and then mitigating them in one way or the other. So what we're speaking about in general, if you look at the SAP security solutions map, is yes, we're speaking about roles and authorizations somehow, but we will not look at the authorizations themselves. We just consider the authorization concept is there. Users have those authorizations wherever they come from. And now we're speaking about how you audit that. How can you manage access that is not justified by business rules, still technically possible. So we are more on the process level where you would look to find errors or potentially even fraud. That's, I think, one of the main aspects if you speak about access violation management. So where do these access authorizations come from? I don't want to say that's normal, but I've seen in many companies and organizations that the authorization concept is actually not properly maintained. And I think that's easy to understand because that's such a hard thing. The requirements from the businesses, they're changing, job profiles are changing and are dynamic. You need to jump in to do something. Business processes change. And what you do not want to have is that people cannot work because they are restricted, because they don't have the authorizations. So maybe in some cases, you rather give somebody more authorizations than he actually would need, just to make sure that he really can work and there's no interruption. There might also be technical limitations, like some things there is just not possible to have a four eyes principle in place. For some things, you can do that. You can have four eyes principles on a process level. For instance, in procurement, you can have somebody maintaining vendor master data and somebody else entering purchase orders or invoices. That's possible. But for some activities, that's not so easy. In particular, when we speak about what we call single actions, definition will follow. I believe like you just do one thing, you change the bank account. Yes, there is a compensating control in SAP, but not for all these single options that's possible. And now to fix the SAP authorization concept, that can be a very lengthy and hairy problem, take a lot of time, and monitoring is a much easier and straightforward way in many ways to mitigate the risk associated. So monitoring means we look at things that somebody did do, not at the authorizations that give him access and say what somebody can do. Yeah, here's a note. Please ask questions or give comments. I think you can put it in the chat. You can also reach out to us if you want to do that at info at at labs@focuslabs.com. Thank you, Stefan. So the access violations can happen on different levels. For the purpose of this webinar, we are restricting it on what we call single action and violation of the segregation of duty principle. Single action is just one single activity. You assign a user role to another user. That's a single and maybe critical activity. You could assign authorizations that the person should not have. You could change some details. You could unlock a vendor. You could unlock a cost center, things like that. You could initiate something, trigger something. And then there's these combinations, as I mentioned before, maintaining vendor master data and entering invoices for the same vendor. And these SOD violations usually are more in focus of SAP authorization teams. Here is a too small picture. I hope this is easier to see. This is kind of a snapshot or an excerpt from the SAP GSE access control SOD matrix that describes some of these SOD violations that are critical and pose certain security risks. And be aware, this does not just cover business processes where you might pay somebody, but this can also cover things in the SAP basis area, development, or SAP administration tasks. So this is really something that is occurring across the system, across all business processes, and on all different levels, how people work with the system, whether they are writing new code, configuring and administering the system, or whether they are working on the business process level. Now, monitoring of these things you can do on different levels. I already ruled out the simplest levels, which is the can-do level. It's a little bit small here, but you see here level 1 is the can-do level. That means you could look at and do analytics on who actually has authorizations to do something. And that's insightful, and that might help you to improve your SAP authorization concept. But it's not a direct compensating control if you have deficiencies in that area. And by the way, we didn't write this matrix. It's or table, but it's a table that I like very much. It comes from KPMG. There is a link here, or the source is cited, and I think it's an excellent article. And so level 1 is the can-do level. Somebody has authorizations. Level 2 is a little bit more detailed. It says, okay, who actually in some way or the other used those authorizations? Who started a transaction that is related to a certain activity? Now, if you start a transaction, you still don't know whether somebody did something or did not do something. So it's not really helping you a lot. Level 3 then is something that already is more useful. It's on the document level. So it's not like somebody went and looked at vendor master data, but somebody really changed or entered vendor master data and did not just look at invoices maybe, but entered or changed invoices. But it could be you look at vendor A, or you enter vendor A, you enter an invoice for vendor B, and there is basically no risk. So if you want really to do a monitoring approach on this, you need to do it on the same document level. That means if somebody is changing a purchase order or an invoice, then the violation actually is only a risk if he previously maintained vendor master data for that vendor, not for another vendor. We have a couple of articles on our website, blog articles. Here is one. You also find these articles, of course, on LinkedIn. So on these different levels, we're looking at level 4, same document, which means this is a real violation of the SOD principle. It's not just an indicator that somebody might be able to do something, but that user really did do something. There is case studies for all of that. Here is another one, an example where somebody manipulated inventory numbers. Probably everybody has read some of this stuff in the press. I just want to point again to the difference. Single action risks, it's really like you only have to do one thing. You only have to change one date, one bank account, change a block indicator on some document or something like that. And that in itself can be a risk. And in some cases, you might want to avoid that risk that somebody can do something just on his own. And SAP has mechanisms for that, at least in some cases. So you can set up what SAP calls sensitive fields in certain areas, like for instance, for critical fields in SAP's vendor master data. So famous example, you can prevent that a single user can change bank details of a vendor if you go set up the bank details as a sensitive field in SPRO and you enable this kind of dual control. In that case, really a second user has to approve the change. So in some cases, you can set up preventive control. In most cases, you can't. So basically, you're left with the only option is doing monitoring, detect those violations. And Nicolas, how do you detect such violations?
Yeah, here, Jens, there are like several ways to do it. And first, I mean, we can say that one option is to do SQBI checks. That is like single queries in SAP. There are like a standard transaction that you can use it to do joins between tables, and that will let us do some special queries. But this has the disadvantage that you can only see the last change on this table. And if you want to be seeing all the changes that were done to a particular document, for example, you need to use change documents. So these change documents you can see in this report, which is called RSSCD 100. So this you can analyze all the change documents and all the changes. And also, as you said, there is the single action that you can analyze one special field or particular value in a table that you can, it can be sensitive. So you want to see what happened or who changed that value. And I think that the best to see this is to see it on the system. So maybe we can take a look and let's see it on a demo.
Cool.
Okay, so now you are seeing this SAP standard first screen, and the idea is to show different type of SOD that can happen and monitor them, and how we can monitor them in SAP with our REMQ tool, for example. So first, I will go to the SQBI transaction, which is SAP standard. And here we can create different types of queries. I have already created one just to show in this webinar what is a particular case that is, for example, vendor yeah vendor data and the cleared items for that vendor. So if I go here to display this query and the basis mode, I can see that the data source is the is a join between two tables. So the first one is the vendor master data, and the second one is the BSAK, which is the one that holds all the cleared items. So if you see, there is one field which links both tables, which is the vendor number. So in this case, we can see all the cleared items for a particular vendor. And if we execute this query, we can, for example, choose a variant. And when we do it, I will take data from 2023, for example. I will execute, and we will see for all these vendors that have cleared items in this particular year. And we can also have the total sum of those items. And but this indicates that only is a case for a vendor and a clear item. It doesn't indicate that the same person was the one who did this change. And to do that, it's better to go to the SOD, as Jens mentioned, which is a segregation of duties. So in the admin transaction on our RMQ tool, we can go directly to the SOD configuration. And here I have also a similar example, which is changes on a vendor master data, and then a posted document to that vendor. So here, this particular example is referring to a change and data to the same vendor. In order to link these two change documents, we need to use this link table, which in this case is the VSEC, the item document item table, and the field is the vendor ID. So when we have this type of rule, we will get information of who and if they did this change on a particular vendor and then posted a document to it. So this actually is a way to monitor this type of sensitive data and authorization that some user may have. So if you go to the alert transaction, and we choose yes, here we will have all the results that are for this particular rule. This one is the vendor item, a vendor changes and posting to that item, to that vendor. So one of these examples is that the object A, in this case, if is the creditor, vendor changes, the date on when this happened, that is 2021, which was the vendor that was changed, and then the document that was posted to that vendor. In this case, we have the document number, which is 1, and also the year is 2021. This that you can see highlighted in blue, it means that we can actually drill down and go and see more details of that document or of that vendor. For example, if I double click on the vendor, we can easily go to the XK03 transaction and see more information about this vendor. In this case, this was a one-time vendor, so it's like double sensitive because one-time vendors should be used only once. And we have some BP block and some more information, address, everything that is related to that vendor. And if we go to the document number, we can see also the amount for which it was posted, the date, and of course the account that it was used to do that posting. So I think that with these SOD rules, we can easily link two change documents and also see all these changes that are linked between those documents. As it was mentioned on the slide, we can go to this uh, program that is standard in SAP, and here we can choose different type of change documents and see all the different changes that happened in a period of time. So for the vendor, we can choose, for example, from 01/01 2023 until 2025, and here we will list all the changes that were done to a particular vendor. So this is standard by SAP, and it will show us all the data that was changed and who changed this data on this vendor. But this, of course, is not linked to another change document that has the tool that we provide to SAP, which is the RMQ tool to do the monitoring. So, and lastly, I think the other transaction that we can see is the single action tool, which also Jens mentioned that we can have sensitive changes to only one field in the system. So in this case, we also have the objects, the change documents, and here we are not linked in with another change document, but we can actually see which particular fields were modified by one user. And like to see it with some examples. For example, this is the SAC, which is the GL account. We can see if we choose different fields like these three, which are the block indicators. So whoever changed the block indicator to activated or inactivated. So easily with this, that is totally integrated with our tool, we can monitor all changes to a particular object in a single action tool.
Nicholas, if I may jump in here, this is
Yeah.
something that a user could also do on a do-it-yourself basis, right? Run the report that you showed before, maybe
Mm-hmm.
export the results to Excel, and then filter for a particular table or field where the changes occurred.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Hmm.
But I think here what we do with this tool is that we integrate with the alerts monitor. So whenever this happens, we can, for example, see it on this transaction, and then we have some workflow to approve or reject this type of alerts, and add more versatility, like adding comments, monitoring, reporting, and so on. Okay, so that's what's it from my side.
Great. Thanks, Nicholas. Yeah, so let's go on. So what we looked at is you can have preventive measures like setting up sensitive fields for dual control. And Nicholas presented different ways how you can actually do data analytics. And what I think is important and what I would like to highlight is that the things that Nicholas showed, at least most of the stuff, is something you can tackle in a do-it-yourself approach. If you want to detect these SOD violations, one thing you can do is, first of all, you check this blog post that we have on our website that gives a detailed description with screenshots and so on, how to set this up using this SAP query viewer, the first option that you, Nicholas, just showed. Again, super simple, 5 minutes of your time. You will get real SOD violations, if you have any in your system, of course. Disadvantage is the information in the tables, as Nicholas mentioned, is restricted. Usually you have the information who created something and the user who did the last change, nothing in between. In many cases, that's already interesting enough. Maybe we are here speaking about the, I don't know, 50%, 80% solution. So I think it's definitely worthwhile looking into that. It's not 100% complete. Nicholas showed these steps, and you can, again, you can check out all of this stuff in the blog post, or maybe Stefan can share the slides of this webinar. So the other thing is, I said you lose all the information about the changes between who created something and who was the user who did the last change. All the information is stored in those change documents. So that's the better source, how to use that. How you can use that and how it works is also described in another blog post. Also, there is a link here in this QR code, or you go to the website and you will easily find it. So while all the information is there, the problem here is that for each change, you have a different change document, so a different entry in a table. So the information is there, but it's not possible with the data that is actually in the change documents to link them together. You cannot easily link together a table entry for, I don't know, changing a vendor and changing a purchase order, because there is no information that links a vendor to a particular purchase order. That information is only in another table, in the EKKO echo table. So if you want to do it yourself, that's possible. All the information is there. You need the change documents, you need the information on the echo table, and then you need to create something like a join for 3 different tables, which is possible. It's a bit more difficult. Might be something to do for someone, not for all. Some limitations here and some other things to consider. One thing that I didn't put on the slide, there might be violations of single action activity that we did not cover. Like maybe somebody can only enter a purchase order up to a certain amount. There's a threshold. Maybe there's no technical control that limits that. We haven't talked about that. You can implement controls for that as well. Today, we didn't touch it so we keep the scope a little bit smaller and digestible, I hope. So there are things we didn't cover and that also fall under the area of access violation management. And some of them are covered by our RebQ tool. Then the other thing is there is all this sort of social engineering and collusion. There is an example here is a case study from Amazon. Actually, a manager there instructed one of the staff to create a certain vendor. Now, if you get instructed to do it and then somebody else gets instructed to enter a purchase order or an invoice, the technical user IDs will not be the same. It's the same bad actor behind that, but somehow he managed to manipulate other people to do something, and that's difficult to detect. Maybe in some cases you can detect collusion if you use statistical analysis, but it's very specific on your use case, and it's not something that's easy to do. And then, I mean, just one example, there's this famous debug and replace. Changes are not recorded. It's very difficult to detect these things using such an analysis. And because there is these blind spots, let's say, it's important that you look at other ways how to detect fraud and errors as well. You cannot just rely on access violation management. You need to look at, does this purchase order make sense? Does the invoice make sense? And we have many controls in our RemQ tool that helps to monitor business processes and critical data. We have many out-of-the-box controls that cover all these things, and that you can run out of the box. And you can also, and that was one part of the Nicolas demo, you can also create your own controls very easily using our no-code tools. So it's important to not just rely on this one analysis, but you need to have a complementing approach that covers other aspects as well. If you want to try out our tool, you're more than welcome. It's free of charge, not binding, and you can get results within very few hours because we have many of these controls in our library. You just install the software, you run it, and you get results. So with all of that, we're looking forward to any questions and comments. And thanks for your time so far.
Hi, everyone. My name is Stefan. I'm running the webinar on the technical base. Jens, thanks for staying for the Q&A session. And before we hit off with the Q&A session with the questions themselves, we would like to turn this around and start a little poll, a little survey consisting of 4 questions, simply yes or no answers. Don't worry about the compliance. Nobody sees the names of the other people taking part in this. We just want to see what is trending on this topic within this little inner circle that we're in here. I'm going to hit off the first question in a second. Let me just try the classic multitasking task. Here we go. Now you should be able to see it now. Do you have access to the SAP Query Viewer SQVI? Yes or no, in your position, in your environment, so we know who we're talking to, basically. I'm going to leave that poll open for another the question open for another 7 seconds before I close it and show you guys the results, so you know what round we're in here. And maybe Jens, you have a comment on it, what you think, how typical this is and how important it is to do actually have access. Here we go. I'm ending the question and sharing the results. This is pretty straightforward. Oh, it's an even number. Interesting. Here we go. 80% say yes, green light for having access. 20% say no. What's the advantage, disadvantage? What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, the question is, I mean, first of all, maybe some people don't know because they have not tested right now. I've seen some organizations where this is not granted to many users. Maybe some of the audience are like SAP Basis team or a security consultant or something like that, and maybe they have a wider range of authorizations. In some cases, it's not granted because companies sometimes have concerns that you get access to certain data through the SQVI that you're not supposed to see, which can happen if you have a kind of bad concept for, authorization concept for accessing tables. That certainly is one concern. But for like an auditor, for instance, I think this should be possible and available as an important tool.
Going over to question number 2 out of 4. Let me launch it in a minute. Here we go. And this is pretty straightforward also. Will you give this a try to detect actual SOD violations in your organizations rather than, using a magnifier to find out what's happening?
Yeah,
I'm gonna
please do
leave
it.
this open. Yeah.
Again, it's not very very difficult. We have various blog posts about this with different examples. Check our website if there is any questions. Yeah, reach out.
Before you go on, let me show you what they said. I think you're going to be highly satisfied. Look at this. Yes, definitely, 100% give it a try. So whatever you sort of said and explained about it, it seems to be working, especially
Is it
the
more than one answer?
DIY. I'm sorry? It's not,
Is it
yeah,
more than
and it
one
wasn't me. So it's not one answer coming from me. It's actually, yeah, full range. Let me jump to the third one here. The third one out of 4, you should be able to see it on the screen now. Are you familiar with how to identify the tables, fields, change documents that you need for the analysis? So how do
it's
you?
sometimes a little bit difficult. I mean, if you're kind of a little bit technical, then maybe you know that. But I mean, what's the change document? I don't know, type that belongs to a vendor and to a certain type of financial document and so on and so forth. I mean, there is of course you can find it in the system. You can search, you can Google, you can chat GPT, whatever, but it's not always obvious. I think that's in many cases the biggest challenge, yeah, right, to really find the data in the different tables and change documents, because
Yeah,
I don't know, there's
and
1,500 different
talking
change document types or so. I don't know, too many. Yeah.
talking about where to find it, and I mean, this actually basically confirms your answer and your explanation around it. So it's 57% to say, yeah, I am, and the others say no, maybe no access, maybe not knowing really how to. Let me go to the last one out of the 4. And it states, do you prefer running analytics in the SAP system or rather doing an export to Excel? So what's your sort of usual way to do it? Leaving this open. Oh, this is basically,
What means
this
yes
can
or
be,
no?
yeah, yes or no doesn't make any sense yet. Okay, let's turn this around and say yes stands for running analytics and no stands for Excel. We didn't actually enter the correct possibilities to answer here. Should have said analytics and Excel. So yes stands for running analytics in the subsystem and no stands for Excel. Let's put it this way.
Yeah, I
Okay,
mean,
that
the
was
way you
good.
can handle a massage data in SAP, of course, is very restricted. This SQVI thing is, of course, it's nice to collect the data, even by doing a join and having certain conditions on the data that you select. And probably in most cases, then you will go and download it to Excel because it's much easier to filter and sort and do a pivot table and all this kind of stuff. So, I mean, basically, I think one idea that we had is that at least this case with this three-way join that you need to do if you want to analyze data in 2 different types of change documents. I think it's possible in SQVI, but I personally I would prefer to do it in Excel because it's much easier to handle. If you, I think the idea is that if you guys want to do that, we have Excel templates for that. Would you be interested in getting access to our Excel templates? Reach out and we can try to help.
This also sort of confirms what you just said. So it's about 50-50, sort of giving the fact that we interpreted the yes for the analytics in the SAP system and the no for the Excel. Apologies for phrasing the answers so badly. Thanks for giving us an overview where you stand. And as Jens said, if you need anything else, or if you need an idea on how to approach something, just reach out to us. I'm going to close the poll now and move over to the questions. And the first one is, on what type of systems do the applications run? ECC, S4HANA, H4S4?
Yeah, I mean, what we just presented, and also this REMQ2, for instance, it's ABAP based. So all the ECC versions of the old SAP ERP and all S4HANA versions.
Excellent. So generally usable. Let's put it that way. The question is a bit well, it's not. It's a rule set question, not a technical one. Can I somehow save those SQVI rules somewhere so I sort of don't have to reinvent the wheel every time?
Yeah, it does it automatically. It always creates a variant, and as soon as you enter the SQVI transaction again, you see all your queries that you created previously.
Excellent. And let me have a look. How do I make this match between two change documents? Is it not possible in SQVI?
Yeah, that's what I just said earlier.
Just said basically, yeah.
I mean, like there's kind of a key field is missing, right? You have one change document contains the information about one business object, the other about the other business object. But how do you relate the two business objects? You need to add information from a third table. Yeah, we had this example of purchase order. So the vendor is there in the change document for the vendor. The purchase order number is there in the change document for purchase orders. How do you know a purchase order belongs to a particular vendor? You go to another table. In this case, it was EKKO. And so that's kind of a three-way join. And you might prefer to do that in Excel. It's easier.
Thanks, Jens. I've run out of questions here for now. I'm not saying that you guys are not thinking of some to send us via email, labs@voquslabs.com. We mentioned it in the webinar as well. Jens is also present in LinkedIn if you prefer that line of communications. And we're still planning a series of webinars that actually make use, because you have practical stuff to try out and DOIs in our blogs that we're publishing. If you think something is missing, or you're interested in something particular, or actually looking for another topic in a webinar, let us know, and we'll try to implement it in our series. Jens, for me, that was it for today.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.